Hey, business people. I am here today with another entrepreneur taking action, or actually somebody who helps entrepreneurs take action, I guess would be more accurate. Garrett D'Entremont. He is the program manager for the Digital Marketer Elite Coaching Program, and he helped build it from the ground up. And I'm getting the scoop today on how he did it. So, to kick things off, tell us a little bit about what you do, who you are, how did you get to this point in your life where you are building a coaching program for a digital marketer?
Yeah, so hello, I'm Garrett D'Entremont. I love hearing the French way to pronounce it, D'Entremont.
2 years of high school French. That's how I have to
Yes,
do it.
yes. Well, I'm so excited. Down here in Texas, we just say it phonetically. Don't get too all cracked up about it. But yeah, love to hear it nonetheless. But yeah, I am the program manager for the lead coaching program at Digital Marketer. Yeah, I've been at Digital Marketer for almost 5 years now. So I know a lot of people listening to this are going to be entrepreneur. I'm more of an entrepreneur here at DM. And there is a lot of opportunity, especially at this company, to provide entrepreneurial spirit that I have within me, within the roles that exist at DM, and especially whenever you're starting stuff new. So yeah, the elite coaching program started about a year and a half ago, right whenever COVID started, coincidentally. I remember one of the things, they said, "Hey, we want you to do this thing. It's super exciting. Guess what? You're going to get to work from home." 2 weeks later, that wasn't a benefit anymore. It was just a reality of life. So we all do that now. But yeah, Ryan, who is our CEO of Digital Marketer, tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, I think you'd be great to start doing this. Here's kind of what I had in mind." And I said, "Okay, well, what all is that going to entail? What is the product deliverable of that?" Which is, I think, where one, regardless of where you are in your professional career, you need to write down the heck you're doing, right? I think it's something that so many people look the ability to just you know, take a blank piece of paper and craft your idea. In what I did is just bullet point and deliverables, and just listed them down and went back and forth with. It's super simple. It's like it's. Let me tell you a tip and trick here. Open up Google, Google Word, or whatever Google Docs you're using, whatever you're using, and say, "This is my product," and write it down in a one pager, and keep it super simple. Keep it simple, stupid. That's what we use that acronym all the time around digital marketers. Keep it simple, stupid. Write it down, and so basically just took this idea that Dice had, and said, "This is how this is how I think we can deliver it." Went through several iterations of that, and then now we have what we have today, and we've seen that progress as every quarter moves on. We try to get better and better, and listen to what our customers are doing, and that's and how they're getting value out of the program, and leveraging those things more, and you know get rid of the all the fluff. So yeah.
Yeah, I know, like, an entrepreneur versus an entrepreneur, but there are so many people in our audience that they're kind of doing the same thing, right? But they're having to play both roles. They're playing Ryan's role and your role. They're having big ideas and they've got to go execute. And a lot of them are building their own coaching programs. That's kind of like the same right now, so to speak. Like everybody's building their own tribes, they're building their own coaching programs, which is why I wanted to pick your brain because you've built a really good one. Like I think I've been in it almost since the beginning actually. And it was one of the first investments that when it was time to renew after a year, it was a no brainer. Like I thought about it for like 30 seconds and said, no, yeah, we're going to do it. Like it's the first one I think I've ever renewed without having to like sit on that thought for like weeks. So like building this thing, like Ryan came to you, had an idea, like what in the heck was the goal of it? Like we're just going to build a coaching. What was it supposed to do in the beginning?
Yeah, so it depends who you ask this question to. Uh, you know, I for if you look from the top down, and kind of my directive is needed a high value, customer segment. Basically, we have what we had at our disposal, a content library that was huge, right? And that's how we
Massive.
get the the vast majority of our customers, right, come in through Lab, right? They come in, a lot of people did a dollar trial, a free trial, or a $7 lead magnet, right? And that gets you in the door. And we use our list to cultivate, and ascend those customers as our ascension ladder, and they're in our
Yep.
customer value journey. For me, I am always thinking about our customer and how we can serve them, right? So I this content library, and I talked to a bunch of people about it, and I said, man, we have all this content, but I don't always know if I'm doing it right or what order I should be doing it in, or, basically I need somebody to help me to do all this stuff,
Yeah.
aside from going out there and hiring somebody to do it yourself, which is always an option as well. And I think that, for some people in certain aspects should do that. But for us, we wanted to provide a space where people can ask questions from a qualified expert, not just some schmuck off the street, but actually people who are practitioners and can answer this a qualified way, and give a place for people to meet regularly and ask those questions and really be held accountable for knocking out things that you do. You're doing on a weekly, quarterly basis, right? We do quarterly planning, but just kind of giving that space, giving that community, and having a guide, a Sherpa along the way, to ask those questions. And it sounds like, at least for you, you said, hey, we renewed right away. I know you've been in it for over a year at this point in time. Very humble to hear that. Very humbled to hear, during last year, like I said, we started right in the middle. I mean, March, early
I
March.
think that's about when I came back into the digital marketer world, actually. So I toyed in and out of digital marketer with the lab stuff, exactly what you're talking about.
Mhm.
Like I would get into lab and there was so much stuff and I would realize I'm not using it. So I would cancel and then I would come back. And I think I did that off and on for years. And then COVID hit and you guys did that whole come back for 14 days for free. And I was like, well, there's a lot of good stuff. Go poke at it for 14. And then ended up in Elite. And it's like, yeah, having access to the coaches. I mean, that's the thing. And I think so many people don't realize how much like content library. Every business owner I talk to, they have a content library. They might not have organized it the way that digital marketer organized theirs, but they all have one. They have blog articles, they have emails, they have sales pitch decks, they have like so much stuff that they use to explain value and teach customers things. And they don't realize that if you just dump that out there in the world, you know, they don't know where to start. What do you do? What do you click on? Where do you go? How do you make sure it's working? And I think that's the coolest part about the coaching program. But then you've also got some really unique challenges because, like, you've got people that have been in it for, since COVID, like me, and you've got people that are just now coming in. You've got people that are seasoned business owners making millions, and you've got people that haven't even made their first dollar. You've got people that don't know anything about DM, and that people that are like drinking every DM sip of Kool Aid they can get their hands on. Like, how on earth are you like? You had to structure a program that worked for all of that and have changes and stuff as you go. Like, what are some challenges? What are you having to do differently because your people are coming in all over the place?
You're exactly right in identifying one of our core challenges that we currently face right now, right? Because we do have a discrepancy of people from, just like you said, that are pre-revenue all the way to multi-million dollar businesses that are with us, right? And so everything that we teach is kind of, I mean, I'm an old football player, like stick to the fundamentals, right? Learn your tackling, learn your position, learn how you're supposed to be lining up, right? This for everyone. And I think there's so many people that, aren't tracking their metrics. And if they are, they're not tracking it consistently or tracking ones that are actual needle movers, right? I don't care if you are pre-revenue or you're $18 million in revenue, which literally I talked to businesses of both sizes this week and it's Tuesday.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. You still have to be tracking this, these needle movers in your business, right? And specifically, we're looking at marketing. There's all sorts of, I mean, you can hire a digital marketer and you can, if you're looking at a whole business, but what we look at specifically is marketing, right? And so stick with those fundamentals, do the things that work no matter your business size, right? The really the three things that we do is, one, we track your how you're actually structuring this whole thing, the journey. We're looking at your metrics with your growth scorecard, and we're planning quarterly. And so that, I don't care who you are, what size you are, you're going to be needing to do that, consistently to have clear direction in your business and, to track results. So just doing that has been huge. There's more stuff that we talk as a team. That's, before we had big changes that happened last year. I think we're going to have some big ones this year for Q4. Super excited about some stuff. Can't can't drop any too much yet because we're still in the planning phases. But yeah, it's certainly it's not something where we made the conscious decision early on as a team to put people in of all shapes and sizes inside of coaching groups, and right. So you have people that are that are up here, and they're having to hear the struggles of people that are down pre-revenue, and sometimes they help, but sometimes it's not getting value. And so we are like, we're not saying, oh, we're stuck in concrete and this is the only way to do it, right? We're
Yeah.
constantly getting information from our users, right? And
Yeah.
refining the product based on that feedback. So
I know I've
it's been fun.
seen so many changes just as you guys have been going through. 'Cause like I said, I've been in it for pretty much the whole time. I know, like, you started off, like, you identified those core fundamentals that you said that everybody needs to do, and you guys had those in that kickstart. But we kind of just initially we jumped straight in with a coach and went running. Not everybody did the kickstart. I don't know who that would be. And they just jumped straight in, and didn't really do the fundamentals like they should have. And I noticed like some of the changes you made along the way, just not being afraid to change. You guys started that where you have that entry thing where they hang out with you and they get their fundamentals down before they can even get a coach. And I've seen the people coming in that are coming through that and it's night and day difference. So not being afraid to change and do that kind of stuff. You guys have changed your whole membership platform. You went from Facebook to Circle, which is a huge move to make that decision with that many people. Yeah, you implemented action squads. Like, I think you just haven't been afraid to change if it served your people, and I think that is just so powerful. Hey, out of all of that, like, what is some of your favorite parts of the program? Like, what are the things that you enjoy the most?
Yeah, you mentioned one of the big changes that we made, which is to our onboarding process, and I think that's anyone should be refining their onboarding process. If you have, I don't care what your product is, you should be constantly saying, how are our customers? They're buying it. How are they implementing it in their lives, and really creating a part of their routine around it ultimately, right? And so we found at the very beginning, we have this cool content that was a 30-day kickstart deal anyways. We found if people were kind of jumping in, just like as you mentioned before, and they're like jumping into groups, and all your questions come around these three documents that I mentioned before: customer value journey, growth scorecard, big three planning canvas. They we found if we created a space where people could work exclusively on that, and then ultimately they have a sense of accomplishment as they get through this 30-day kickstart. They're like, oh man, I finished it, I feel good about where I'm at. The next phase of our program, which you're kind of in that accountability ongoing question asking of a coach and things like that, your questions become much more meaningful and targeted during that time. And it's we can use the time that we have with a coach, right? And these coaches are, I said this earlier, they're qualified experts. They're running multi-million dollar agencies of their own. So, time is of essence and valuable to all of us, right? But really them who, they're spinning all sorts of plates, right? So we have to take the time that they have with us, leverage that to, to the most efficient use of that time. That can happen once you have indoctrinated these people. They're speaking your lingo, right? And you're not having to educate them, inside of a more advanced call, right? So that was a very, very huge change we made. Also, a lot of the automation pieces. I'm a big fan of automation.
Okay.
You mentioned some of the software upgrades that we use. We use Airtable here in our program. We're the first people at Digital Marketer to bring on that new technology. Another call out to that entrepreneur spirit, and like kind of evaluating new software and saying, hey, how can we use this to better the customer experience? We really liked rolling that out, and it's something that we've seen grow inside of digital market as a whole because we started here, right? So waiting, yeah, just seeing where people are kind of getting hung up, because you can see it. You're going to see it. You're going to see people saying, hey, at the end of this 30 days, I'm feeling lost. Where the heck am I supposed to go? Right? Okay, cool. You know what? I'm going to schedule some time with me. After you finish this thing, we're going to make sure everything's kind of outlined. You have clear direction on where to go next. And then, we'll continue to refine and meet on an ongoing basis. Uh, but yeah, I mean, just finding, hearing, listening, being empathetic, and creating stuff, cool solutions around it. It's a rewarding experience for sure.
Well, and I think it's really cool too that you drew a line in the sand on your onboarding. Like, everybody's kind of like, where do you exit onboarding and you go into continuous delivery and being able to draw that line in the sand. Like, once you have your three documents, now you can go, now you can move forward. So, this goalpost they have to meet, they have something they're driving towards. I see a lot of people, especially with programs like this that are ongoing or where it's like a yearly payment instead of a monthly payment. It's really easy to think like, oh, onboarding's the whole first year, but it's not. People aren't going to stick with it for more than like, what is it, like 30 days, I think, max, most people. Or whenever your payment renews, like if it's a monthly payment, like a few days before that next payment or a few days after, that's when they question, is it worth it? Most people won't give it more than 30 days before they question if it's worth it. I've quit programs in 2 weeks.
Mhm.
I've quit programs after the very first meeting in the program because I was like, screw this isn't for me. And I've exited so people will jump fast, especially when they're busy. And I like something else you just said too. When you're talking about evaluating software, and this is something I see entrepreneurs I think get wrong a lot. You said we looked at how can it benefit the customer experience, not how can it make my life better? Because I mean that's good too, right? When you've got a bunch of things, you're doing a whole bunch of stuff, you need something that makes your life better. But how is it going to make the customer experience better? That's a powerful little word there, Garrett, that little sentence there. That's something that people just don't think about, and I think it's something you have to constantly question. Now, you get to meet almost everybody that goes through this program, if not everybody. I think you actually meet every single person that goes through this program.
I am
What are
now
some of the
meeting
coolest
everyone.
wins?
Yeah,
What do you get to see people do? I mean, you see them from, like, very beginning and, like, some of us are still here a year and a half later, and you're still like, "Y we can talk to you, we can reach out to you up in circle and have conversations." What are you seeing us do? What are some cool
I'm never very far away, so you can always, find me, and yeah, I have gotten the opportunity to, now I am, having a touch point with everyone that comes in the program. I until it gets overwhelming, and then, maybe we'll hire somebody else, but no, I enjoy talking with people, so I think that that's one of my big strengths, so I'm like, why would I not, use my even though it creates a little more work, but it's enjoyable to me. So I do that,
A
but
lot more work. There's a lot of people in that program, and you are literally talking to every one of us. A lot of work. I don't think anybody else I know talks to that many people
I
in a week
I
is what you do.
I have a I enjoy it though. So the extrovert part of me is like, yes, I still get to meet with people. So, but you asked specifically about success stories and things that make this thing rewarding to me, and that's something that I'll continue to say. You'll hear rewarding from me because it's like a fulfilling thing to know that people come into this program and their lives and businesses are changed. I mean,
Yep.
and is it going to be everyone? No. Are there some stories that you're like, ah, I wish we could help this person? Of course, but it's the people whose businesses, the people who pre-revenue that go to substantial amount of revenue those are my most fun stories, because they took this idea and they execute on it, and now they're they're generating revenue. The the next level of that is when they start hiring people, right? So you take people that were solopreneurs and they start bringing people on. That is such a meaningful thing for me because not only are we, creating a livelihood for this entrepreneur, but for their entire team that they're bringing on. There's somebody who started themselves and has an 8-person team now. In the past year, they've grown in that size, right? So knowing that we're literally putting food on the table for people's families, is 8 people at one company that started from one person. That
Yep.
is the most rewarding experience for sure.
I know I've gone from 2 to 35 just since I've been a digital marketer. Like, just meeting people and making connection, and, it's been such a great community. Like, you guys have created a vibe. I say you guys, it's you. You've been doing it all. You're the one bringing it all together and making all of it work. And the community is amazing. You can not feel bad. And there is somebody who's been there, done that, that will answer it. I've been reaching out and interviewing other people that have had successes, that have hired people. Like, I'm talking to one guy who managed to hire his first account manager, and that is a tough position to. You are letting go of customers and letting someone else manage their experience. That is a really hard. And he had grew to that point where he did. He offloaded his first couple of customers to his new account manager and let them run them. Those success stories are just like they touch you right in the feels when you get to see some of that kind of stuff. It's amazing. And like I've even helped like people ask questions, and just the fact that I gave advice that in the tiniest little bit of way help them, do something, and I get to see their success story when they share their wins in Circle or in Facebook. And it's like, good for you. It's awesome. It's just
Yes.
exciting. And
Rewarding,
you see that
rewarding
all the
again.
time. I feel
Yeah.
like every week we're sharing those, we get into the action squads, we get into the topical calls, we get into the accountability calls, and we see them in the circle group. And it's like, there are so many wins every single week. It's just such a positive group. So I love it. Just have to throw that out there. It up here. Do you have any advice or tips? Like people are going out there, like I said, they're building coaching programs. They're creating their own and their little niche of the world, trying to accomplish something and share their expertise and engage their tribe. Do you have any tips, any advice that you would share with them as they're going to
So
do that?
so many. So I will say, I mentioned it early on. Keep it simple, stupid. A acronym that we use around here. Write it down, put it on a piece of paper. If it doesn't make sense to you, it's not going to make sense to a customer. So this stuff down, make it easy to understand. If you can't explain it in an elevator pitch to your, to your wife, then you're in trouble there. So do that. Another thing that I will I've worked with a lot of businesses, thousands at this point. Grow a list and cultivate that list. So I think it's something that people overlook all the time, which is
Yeah.
actually
Especially since
having.
they use Facebook groups because they don't own the list. Sometimes, like, you got them signing up, you ask for their email and the membership question, and don't realize, like I did, that Facebook just yeets that away once you approve the member and it's
Oh wow,
gone. You
yeah,
don't have that information anymore. And I've seen so many people that have put so much effort into growing those groups. They've lost all the emails.
yeah.
They have
That's a
no
little
way to
hack
contact
right
those
there.
people because they
That's a
didn't
Christina
save them
hack that
off.
I didn't even know. Facebook will just get rid of that email once they put it in. So copy and paste that, and add it
Yep,
to your
I signed
list.
up for something called Grief Leads. I think that's like a Chrome extension, and it will read it and shift it over into a Google spreadsheet. So I've been using that. But yeah, I lost 120 something entries,
Yeah.
120 something people that I don't have their email address because I didn't know that it was doing that. I assumed I set up the membership questions and I would be able to find the answers again somewhere. So they're just gone. So yeah, making sure from the beginning that you have their email. Listen, whatever you're doing, that you have their emails.
Yeah, another word of advice here is to keep your tech stack simple to start with. I This is something that you and I talked about earlier. Your CRM was note card to start with, and I think you probably still have some on your desk next to you.
I do.
But using free tools and Google Sheets and things like that that are at your disposal are is highly encouraged as you start something. I still have this mentality in my mind, even though we're a pretty, MRR and annual revenue. So there you go. At this point in time, I try to have the low bottom line as I possibly can. So this includes with our tech solutions that we use. We don't try to use anything super expensive. Even Airtable, which I mentioned before, not a super expensive solution there.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And our
just keep.
accountability call spreadsheets are in Google Sheets.
Yeah. And then my final word of advice is, have find somebody that you can ask questions to. Have a community, have somebody who is an expert, who has been there, done that, right? That they can say, they can quickly say, hey, here's how I overcame that. Or, somebody that can say, this looks good, go out and execute on it, right? That is huge. And I guess one final word, you talked about the wins before. We celebrate those in our community. Take time and celebrate those internally with those people around you as well. That attitude of gratitude is something that we try to convey at DM and inside of our community. So just remember to give thanks and just pass those positive vibes on. Because we're all working hard. We're all trying to serve the people around us, and yeah, that's hopefully those are some good advice. This is like pretty much
No,
my
those are
years of
great advice.
experience that I can everyone that is listening to this. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, those are things I tell people all the time too. I mean, you've got to be willing to pick people's brains. There's always somebody who has walked that path before you. And I don't know anybody, like most entrepreneurs will give you 30 minutes of their time. Like book as many 30-minute calls with as many people as you can and pick their brains. Like you learn so much and can overcome so many potholes in 30 minutes. And I
I
love the
have
tech advice. I mean, this is my CRM when I
yeah.
started Content Ninjas. It's literally index cards. And I've been a HubSpot partner agency for 8 years. I help people set up CRMs and auto tech inclined. I love software. But this let me pivot quickly. This let me figure out very, very, very quick what my stages were that my customers were going through without a lot of like pomp and circumstance. It was so fast, so easy. And now it is in software, but I keep this just to illustrate the point. And it lets you do exactly what you were saying earlier. Like, how can we use software to improve the experience? So even if you have to do it low tech to start with, go low tech, and then figure out, okay, how can we make this better? So yeah, I love, yeah, great advice all the way around. All the way around. So if anybody's listening to this and you're
The
not
one
in a program, you need to join because it is amazing.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Yeah, the shameless plug, digitalmarketer.com, go find our elite stuff. It'd be great. We'd love at least talk to you, and I'm sure we could be able to help you. I'm sure a lot of the listeners here are already elite customers, so if you are,
Yeah.
we
A
love
lot
to.
of people in my world are hanging out in the elite world. That's how I met them. So yeah, because it is
I
such a community. But
I wanted to say just one other piece of advice. It takes longer than you think it does. Everything takes a little bit longer. Plan plan for if you think you're gonna execute something in a week, might take a month. So we
yeah,
always
I
try to
think I was
temper
listening to something
expectations.
with Tony Robbins and Dean Grazioso over the weekends, and they say that we always overestimate what we can accomplish in a year and underestimate what we can do in 5. And
Exactly.
it was like that was a little powerful nugget. I think it was Tony Robbins that was saying that. And it's like, yeah, and we do. We really do. We overestimate what we can accomplish in a week or 2 weeks, but then we look at, what we could accomplish in a year and we pull that line back. We don't push. We don't say, here's where I can be in a year. And it's like it's so true and I love it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
thank you.
that's a good one there too. So yeah, appreciate you, Christina. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on and doing this, for sharing this advice. I said you guys definitely head over to digitalmarketer.com. Wherever you are watching this video at, somewhere on the interwebs, there will be links to all of that to go check it out. I love the Elite program. Literally changed my life. One of the best coaching programs I have ever seen. So being able to pick your brain and take you away from all the busy things you're doing over there and pull some of those nuggets out, I think is so helpful. And then, guys, entrepreneurs, this is your call to take action. Join our community at etatoday.zone. Learn how to build a business that enables your lifestyle instead of taking over your life. We're constantly learning from amazing people like Garrett and a lot of other business owners and stuff that are out there doing cool things, that are treading those paths before we do and can give us some advice. Thank you again, Garrett, for doing this. And all y'all have a great day.
Thank you. See you soon. Bye.